Hello YouTube, this is Alignment Games and welcome back to my long part series of how to make a game using Blender's game engine. And I haven't been making videos lately due to some personal issues, but I'm feeling better and I have my situations under control. So without further ado, welcome to part 3 of this game tutorial. And today we're going to be focusing on how to make a new game level scene and how to put textures into our objects. Now, before we begin, before you start watching this tutorial, I suggest that you should find some textures that we're going to use to put onto our characters in our level design. So I chose 4 of these textures, one being for the floor, for our walls, one for our enemies, and the other one for our main characters, just to distinguish one another and to give details to our game. Now, for these type of textures, you can easily find them on the internet. I chose using Google's image, where you can just go ahead and search textures, and you can find many different textures that for your liking and whatever you want to use. You can even use some textures that you want to put, but for the sake of this video, I just chose some simple textures. Nothing too fancy or crazy. So to start off, open up your game and for the sake of this video, I did some stuff, went ahead to save some time. Like for this one, I added a camera, and what a camera would do is to give you a perspective of the game when you activate its testing mode, which is playing the game essentially. And to put a camera, it's really easy. You go to create on the toolbar and you scroll all the way down to camera, and when you press it, it'll give you a new camera option, and you can go ahead and position it any way you like it. And if you want, you can spend time in making it, putting it in different angles. But for the sake of this video, I already have a camera that I already put, so I don't have to waste your guys' time by positioning it. And for our sake of the video, I actually made some new levels, but I'll teach you in a second how to make a new level and put unique designs to it. So right off the bat, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna add a new scene. So to do that, if you look up here where it says the scene tab, you press the plus sign, and what you want to do is that you have all these options, and to make a level, make a level and give it some different looks and features to it, I would suggest going to full copy. And what full copy would do is that it will take the previous objects and settings of your previous level and add it into this new one. Now you can make different designs of it without actually affecting the first level that we made. But since I already have one, I don't really need this. Just we're gonna use 2 levels for the sake of this video. And basically what I did is that I changed it up a little bit and I made it wider. I gave it some walls just to show you that when you what we're gonna do is that when we go to play our first level, we're gonna go through this door, and instead of quitting it like we did what we made it do in the last part series, we're gonna instead make it go to the next new level. So to do that, basically what you should have is when you go to your connectors, it should say quit game, but now you can change it up by going to scene, and for the mode we're gonna put a set scene. And now for the scene tab right here, we'll go to scene 1, and what we'll now do is that instead of going to the door and quitting the game, we can now go to the next level. So just to show you, I'm gonna go through this door, and when we hit it, it will go to the next level. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that I know that a lot of people have issues when it comes to like doing these type of transactions and settings. Maybe sometimes Blender what will do is that it won't work, or it would freeze or lag and stuff. And generally, that's what happened to me. So for the sake, if there's issue, sometimes it's even too good to restart the programs because it can sometimes be a little bit iffy on how it transits to one level to the other. But it takes some time getting used to. But when you're confident enough to know that things are supposed to go the way you made it. It's just Blender has a hard time of doing it because it's not a, I wouldn't say it's a bad program, but it isn't the best one when it comes to it. But to start off for basics, Blender is something that I personally choose because it's really simple and easy to follow. And one thing I also want to mention is that to keep your game more organized, I would suggest that when you go into scenes here, you have the option to change its title. So what will be a good recommendation is to change it by, for instance, go changing it from scene to level 1. And when we go to the scene point 001, change it to level 2, so in that way it's easier to find the different scenes and levels that you created. And it also change it automatically for our scene for the connectors here. Now, with that being said, we have you can make as much levels as you want, and you can just keep repeating the process. So instead of this door, when you go into this door and you quit, you can go ahead and make a new scene, and you can change it up, and you can change that connector to, instead of quitting, to go to the next level. And you can make as much level as you want, so you can have very diverse and longer games that way. But for this video, again, I just want to show you how to go transition from one scene to the other. Now, for the next part of our part of this video, I mentioned that we're going to be putting textures into our game objects and our characters. And to keep in mind is that for doing these type of things, it really is a nitpicking when we want to make good textures and good details of your game. But for the simplest part of just putting it, I'm just going to show you how to do it. So when it comes to putting new objects and new items into your game, it will at least stand out so you can tell from the rest. So personally, to start, I will go ahead and go to where it says transform, this little sidebar right here, and there will be a plus symbol on your mouse, on the mouse of your computer. And what you want to do is click on it, left click it, and you want to, oops, not this one. But yeah, you want to go ahead and drag it to the left, and that way it will make another scene. So now you have two different screens to look at. And also you want to even it out so you can see from both sides. And this is also good when it comes to positioning your camera, I forgot to mention, because now you can go ahead and look where the camera is, and while you're doing it, while you're moving it around, you can look at the viewfinder right here, and you can tell where you want to actually position your camera and how good could the player see. And for the sake of making textures, I would personally do it one by one. So let's say we want to pick out, let's say, our character, for instance. I would go put him not in a different scene, but there's like sort of this sub scene where you can have these different windows within the same game scene. And if you go right here where you have all these like little square blocks, this is what I'm talking about, where you can go to multiple layers, and you can go ahead and pull objects from one layer to the other. And to do that, I would press Control, no, not Control, just M, and you have the options to move it to any layer that you desire. So we're just gonna go and put him into the next one. So now that we only have him, it's easier to look at him and basically put some details while going through other objects and having so much stuff in one screen. Now what you want to do is you want to go press Tab on your keyboard, and you want to go right here where it says UV shading, and you want to go down to UV mapping, and you want to mark scene. And now what it does is that it basically highlights all the sides of your object, and you want to go ahead and unwrap it. And now what you want to do is on your other viewfinder, you want to go to the bottom left, and when it says change the viewpoint, you want to go all the way to UV image editing. Now what this does now is that all of the sides that we highlighted is now on the table that is shown right here, and 6 sides represents, a square. So each side right here will represents the side of the square, how it will look. And we, like I said before, with our pictures, what we want to do is go to right here where it says open, and you want to look for your image on your computer. So when you find your image, in this case the smiley face, press on it and put open image. Now what it did is that now the image that we want to put is on the table, and as of right now you can't see it, because one other thing that you should do is that now, since we're adding textures into our game, if we scroll over to here for the 3D view, it's at object mode, and object mode is to show you the objects and the solid sides of our game items. But for the viewpoint shading, if you go to textures, you can now see that our textures are now showing for our object. And as of right now, it looks like a mess. But what you can do is that you can adjust it any way you like. So it would like give it like a actual face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and organize it, and when I come back you should see a 6-sided smiley face. Okay, so I'm back now. I went ahead and not only just added the character's face texture, but I went ahead and also went and did it for the enemy, because they're pretty much the same thing except just using different textures. And when it comes to making putting the right squares and adding the right amount of texture so it doesn't look like it's sloppy and can overlap. And what I'm trying to say is that, when you trying to put it to fit the perfect size, sometimes, if you're working on it, it can one of the sides can not be at the end, and it can might be confusing, and sometimes the result can be that, the texture doesn't look right and it looks like it's being pulled. But basically, to make it easier, is that when you try to put it together, and this is also saying that for doing these type of things, you can move it around. Sometimes if you want, you can go ahead and move the actual table. Me personally, is that since you are already aware of, sides and the basic format of an object, you can go to here, and when it says like selecting, it'll probably be on like a vertice select, and you can just click on sides, and now you can, like, go ahead and choose whatever side just seems off and go ahead and adjust it. Granted, because textures can be complex, especially for your objects, but keep in mind is that for making like a basic game, you wouldn't need to really struggle on it, and by all means not even professional, but to make it just look, seem appealing, you have all these different choices you can do. But enough being said, so when you have, like, your character and your enemies, and I went ahead and made it only for one, because now, since we have our texture for one of the enemies, now when we go back to object mode by pressing tab again, you can now notice that we don't need these enemies, since they're textureless, and it also does save you time, so you can go ahead and delete them. So now that we have both of these characters ready to go, just press select both of them and press M, and then put them back into the first layer that we have for our level. And now for putting enemies and stuff, now you can just go ahead and duplicate, as much as you like, and now they have the same thing with their texture, so you don't have to worry about, doing each and individual one. So right after that, now we want to put textures on our floors and our walls. Now it's the same thing like what I taught you with the characters. However, because it's like bigger, the objects are bigger and they seem a little bit more different. It it is also a problem when it comes to making it neat and stuff. So you have many ways you can do this. I mean, you can obviously just do it right here, but for me, like I said, I just like to move it into a different layer and just work on it like that. Even go ahead, you can take the walls. You don't have to, bother looking around, and you can just separate them and work on them individually. And by the way, if you want to go ahead and basically remove the table pictures, I forgot I mentioned this earlier. Basically, when you have go over here where it says the .jpeg or the ping file that you have, just press X and it cancels it, and you can go ahead and open up another textures. So for this case, since we're starting with the flooring, this use this texture I got. It's a JPEG file. Find it and open the image. Once again, you're greeted with the texture here, and go ahead and press tab and then mark scene. Oops, mark scene, and then unwrap it again. And since this is like a more of a flooring type, you don't necessarily have to, put textures on the side, on the bottom, because what essentially is that when you play the game, you're gonna be seeing it on the top side most of the time. So without wasting time and stuff, I would say just go ahead and focus it. Obviously, as you make more better and more visually appear professional games, you have like individual textures for the sides and underneath. But for the sake of the video, again, like I keep saying it, just go ahead and just really focus on the top one. So I'll be right back, and when I come back, I will show you that the textures in the wall should have the textures on them. Okay, I'm back. Now I have both the floors and a wall and the wall that I'm gonna use to for my level design. And basically, while I was going through and creating some of the sides, I noticed that there are common problems that will come to happen one day from anyone who watches this video or who does textures or makes like want to make a game of their own. There are like a lot of issues that people can come across, and like some of them are just a click of a button. And sometimes they can be frustrating, could last like hours to do. Like some of the problems like one can come across is that when you make a texture, sometimes the objects that you use, they can become 2D instead of 3D. Like it could become like a plain floor, like in this case this object that I have here. And what happens is that only the top and the bottom will have textures. However, there won't be any sides to show, and even stuff like that. When it comes to game designing, it could be a problem because when you have a 2D design, sometimes the flooring and the physics won't work correctly. And worst case, you can have like maybe a character that can won't move because of the physics, or sometimes will fall through the floor since it's too thin. And when you have a problem like that, the best solution I found out is that if you were to choose it, the object, and you can go to tools. No, not tools. You go to actually first you go to tab, and then what you do is in your tools you can go to extrude, and in this case I would go to extrude regional. And now what extrude would do is that it will pull out a side, and that way it can go back from being 2D to a 3D object, and now you should be able to continue where you left off. And if it doesn't still work, you can also go go to UV shading and mark seam, and then this time around it should be able to work. However, in this case, I already have our object for the flooring. And another problem, like when you come to making the walls, is that sometimes like this pop-up happened, and if you haven't catched it, I'll do it again. But basically, what will happen is that when you try to unwrap the package, I mean the side of your object, what will happen is that it will have this error saying objects are non uniform or scalar. Unwrap will be slightly off, and you can clearly see that from this point a lot of our objects are small, and they have a lot of these small squares and whatnot. And when you look here, the object just looks completely off. And this can be frustrating because, when you even try to move the sides a little bit, you will hardly notice that it will make any much of a difference, and sometimes you won't be able to correctly fix it. Now, for something like this, I found out that if you go to object mode and you hit basically Control A, and one thing is also to highlight the object too. When you hit Control A, you have this option to apply, and you have these choices. It's good to go with apply scale, so it will correctly size it. So now what will happen is that if we go back to tab and we try to mark scene and unwrap it again, you can clearly see now that our sides are more bigger and more organized. And if you look here, you can clearly see that the textures is much more clear than the first time we did it. So that's another problem that people can face. And another thing is that sometimes, like, when you're trying to do a texture, the texture on the object can look like off by it being like upside down, or it could be on the side like this case. And what you want to do is to make it neat and one sided, so it looks realistic and it looks like, that it essentially is a wall. And one of the options you can also do is that if you go to this side of the window and you click on the object, specifically if you want to choose a side, so let's say you want to do this one that's on slanted on the side. If you press R on your keyboard, what it will do is that basically it will do a rotation, but actually you also have to press A twice, because what it will do is that it will unselect and select all, whether it be in this window with objects or in this one with sides. So when you have all of it highlighted, when you press R, you can now rotate the side of the object, and you would notice here that when I do it, it also reflects it on the object that we're trying to put a texture on. So in this case, with the side of the wall, you can now smooth it out, make it even. And sometimes also is that, when you have something that looks like it's zoomed in, it brick walls aren't this big in real life, so it shouldn't have to look like that in a game too. So that's why you can press S on the keyboard, and you can also scale it as how many bricks you want it, depending how big the wall is and how big the game is in general for like your characters. So you can go ahead and mess around, and you can go, when it goes too small, you can invert it even. So that's like another few problems that people come across that's common when you do these type of things. But anyway, what those aside, you should have both your floors and both your wall, and you can go ahead and click on both of them and return them back to the first layer as our previous level design. And now you can go ahead and basically uh, adjust them a little bit, put back the walls. And since you have them now, you could just easily go ahead and what we did with our second level, since this one is like, no textures at all and stuff. If you want, you can go ahead and just copy and paste the textures, your object with textures now. So you can put some diverse, and you save time and stuff. And to do that also is that if you want to pick a particular object or whatnot, if not, you want the whole map, you can just double tap A on this window, and you can press Control C, and it will do is copy select the object to buffer. Now you can go ahead and go to whatever level you want to put, and now if you press Control V, the object has been pasted from buffer. You have now all of your objects from your previous level with the textures on, and you can go ahead and add how much stuff you want. But in this case, this is just to show you all the different options and ways you can mix things up and make a lot of uniqueness and diversity to your level. So that's the basics when it comes to texturing and creating levels. So I know it's been a while, like I said, that I haven't been making videos, and I know people have been asking for me, but I'm now like settled in, stable enough to continue making more. And since this is our part 3 video of our full game series, part 4, I will try to explain and show you how you can put background music and put some sound effects for your characters, your enemies. You know, sometimes when you have a change in your scene, that can also be can also play a sound. And for now, you know, you can go ahead and make any type of map you want. So thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, tell me in the comment section how am I doing, what videos do you want to see more. If you have any questions regarding this part or any other part I have, please let me know. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.